A Guide to Unlocking Alpha. Discovering the Intersections Where Success Awaits. By Soto. Anything conceivable by the mind of man, woman, is possible. With time and effort, this timeless truth will make itself apparent. Preface. In writing this text, I aim to strictly steer clear of any metaphysical, abstract, and theoretical analogies and solely focus on compiling a practical set of field-tested guidelines in their most condensed form without sacrificing the core essence of each topic. I ask the reader be forgiving if at times I seem to have veered away from the same. The weight of consideration given in producing the right impact with just the right duration of time spent covering each topic was also of great measure. Though, this text may not be wordy in length, great consideration has been taken to provide a grand overview so as to encompass a wider audience and their varying dispositions. The set of guidelines given in this text have been compiled through a mixture of recent scientific discoveries, ancient Eastern Indian knowledge and thorough practical examination and application of their final renderings. The reader is advised to not simply take the text in literal at face value but rather, if they so choose to, adopt each aspect as a slow integration into one's way of living as a means of trial. If the reader should find any or all practices to be beneficial, then please feel free to carry onwards using such applications in all aspects of living. The reader is also advised to discard any applications that are found non-applicable and is encouraged to remain open to the possibilities of misunderstandings and their modes of usage. A list of helpful resources and works-cited materials used in compiling this text gathered over the years of independent study, application, and research can be found in the appendix. Acknowledgement. I would like to take this moment to pay homage to my teachers of various stages of my life. Firstly, my parents Fred and Martha, who have taught me the meaning of compassion and understanding from a very early age. To my grade school teachers, who in the early beginnings fostered in me the essence of patience and aided in my development, I so often took for granted. To my grandparents, who showed me the value in tenderness and quietude. To my siblings and friends, who honor me with their graciousness. And lastly, to my religious teachers, who through their unconditional kindness have shown me the path to the way. From the bottom of my heart, I am forever grateful. To every one of you. Thank you. The Editor. The Mind. 1. Success is every idea, every emotion, every concept of fulfillment known to man. It is ingrained into the human psyche at birth and repeatedly ingested through every phase of life until the immortal end. Even the idea itself is not the means to an end, but rather a waypoint to assess, analyze, reconvene, and regroup to make our way onto the next node, that of possibility. The truth is, success is a mask of chaos, noise, confusion, and disarray of our own making. What we are striving towards is already before us, immutable, unchanging, undying. It is as present as the very flesh and bone we are standing in. It is in this present moment, not some far distant idea lingering in another galaxy of another time. It can be held, tasted, felt. It is pulsating. Why? Then you ask. Why the confusion? It's a matter of how. One begins every task with the first step. Before one can successfully make a bowl of spaghetti, one cannot begin with adding dry noodles, salt, into a cold unheated pot, followed by turning on the stove and heating the ingredients. Then lastly, add the water. That is only a recipe for disaster. To achieve anything as successful completion, lie a process, a modus operandi, a methodology to reach the desired end result. Well, success itself in any worthy endeavor is no different. It begins with first acknowledging the chaos, the noise, the smoke and mirrors, as they are. They are merely mental formations along your path to success. How then must one know when the time is right to set off on one's endeavor? No one can tell you what to do, when to do it, and in quite honest terms, how to begin. You just have to. It begins with this notion alone that everything you've ever thought you wanted, needed, striven towards is ever present right before your very being. You can even see it visually. That's how it begins. That's where it lives. There has never been a more advantageous time in all the history of man than this very moment. In a literal sense, time has presented us with the most opportune crossroads when and where information, networking, and the ease of access to resources is now. The only ingredient needed in allowing its fruition is you. The only person who is standing between where you are now and the realization of that success is you. Once you've come to this understanding, you have taken your first step towards success. The other side to this coin is, what are you willing to give up to achieve ultimate success? Before one can see clearly, the blockage must be cleared away. What are you willing to trade and let go of entirely to reach this goal? Are you willing to work overtime? Are you willing to sacrifice everything besides the bare essentials? Are you willing to persevere even long after the results are disproportionately yielding against what you've invested thus far? There is no one accountable other than the recipient of these modes of activity or inactivity. All results are directly proportionate to the efforts attributed, whether or not apparent at first glance. In time, they will reveal themselves accordingly. As Steve Jobs put it, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backward. He went on to add that faith will become incredibly important when seeing through to the end. Only when in retrospect will it become apparent. This isn't the same as wishful thinking but rather an antidote to when, not if the doubts, fears, anxieties, and urges to give up sprout along the path. As you begin, it may all seem arduous of a task. The thought of failure will be ever present. In fact, Failure is imminent. Allow it. Be prepared to fail time and time again. Before long you will unlock the old proverb, failure is indeed the seed of success. There's a well-known saying in the Valley, Silicon Valley, fail fast and fail often. Though this bit of encouragement doesn't give much detail as to what it is hinting towards. This covers that in more detail. There will be many obstacles along your path to success. Those obstacles often seem to present themselves during a bout of overwork-induced fatigue, lack of sleep, and untimely mishaps along the way. These are the failures, each one task that didn't pan out the way you were hoping it would. One after another. Be prepared to pivot at a moment's notice. Keep moving. On to the next task that is directly associated with the goal at large. As soon as you discover that one task didn't work, write it off as collateral damage and keep moving forward. The sooner you build this keep moving forward mindset, the sooner it becomes apparent that other opportunities are waiting behind each failure, leading to bite-sized viable tasks that do work, incrementally edging you closer to your overall result of aim. Oh, this is a timely segue to point out that your overall end result will differ to some degree from what you first envisioned. That's okay. You need to develop this give-and-take flexibility if you plan to execute the entirety of your path to completion. This newfound ability to be malleable at a moment's notice will only add to your inventory of exceptional growth. In time, you will have amassed an armory of newfound skills that you wouldn't have come across without the painstaking trials of just sticking with it. Though this undertaking may seem monumental as you begin taking your first few steps towards success, in reality, it's quite the contrary. That vision you held not but a moment ago, the one you brought about through imagination with ease and in such a matter-of-fact way. Repeat this over and over, as if you were projecting it in the form of a hologram right before your very eyes. You can almost reach out and touch it. That's where and when it will come about. The seed has been planted. Your only task now is to nourish it until it bears fruit. That nourishment is nothing other than the actions needed to establish the overall momentum towards the completion of your goal. There are a few indicators, which from time to time will tell you, you are well on your way. These indicators will be ever present along your journey. Your ability to notice them as they arise will depend on the scope and scale of your awareness. This, in tandem, will be that very awareness making its way through the noise and chaos we touched on earlier. Once the indicators become more frequent, that's when you will know it has begun. What reveals itself over time is one's ever-expanding awareness. Awareness is the propellant that will ultimately lead you to the completion of your goal, to success. One example of just how paramount awareness is to any worthy endeavor is shown in the following example. Have you ever accidentally injured yourself and all but completely forgotten about it? Then, a later time found a bruise or scrape or a particular area began aching and immediately your mind swarms to some hypochondriacal state of panic. Then at some later point in time, your memory slowly begins to recount the incident that led to you receiving the injury. A quick swipe on the ankle off a bicycle pedal while cycling to work in a haste state of rush. Or, that branch that brushed against your elbow on your morning jog. After recalling the event, the mind slowly begins to recalibrate back to the state of homeostasis. Well, the lack of awareness was disproportionately present, more so than its counterpart, but enough so that you were able to slowly infer upon recollection. For every amount it's worth. This awareness played a significant role in both archiving and allowing the recollection to resurface. This awareness will play the same role for every problem you'll encounter along your journey. To any and every problem, once you are aware of it, the awareness becomes a beam of light. Amidst the darkness of noise, chaos, and confusion. Most often you will find that it illuminates hidden potentialities towards the direction of a viable solution. I can't stress to you just how expansive this muscle can get if you practice allowing your awareness to take full heed of your everyday life. When the going gets tough and you begin to encounter one obstacle after the other, the ability to recount just exactly how you arrived at the error will save you time, effort, and worry on the confusing whys. Instead, your awareness will begin opening you up to the hows. How to approach the obstacle from a different vantage point. Under a new light, with fresh eyes. The ability to be self-aware will greatly enhance your entire life, from relationships, the completion of major tasks, and undoubtedly the aches and pains that crop up along your journey. Practicing to expand your awareness will be the single most transformative decision of your life. Practice bringing your awareness before you with every undertaking you embark on. Whether you are engaging in minuscule tasks that require little to no extra thinking, just simply engage your full attention to the task at hand. Your unequivocal awareness. Tasks as simple as brushing one's teeth, sorting laundry into the washer, or stepping into your home from a long day's work. Allow your awareness to fill the room. Allow it to permeate every article of tactile object, laden throughout your field of vision. Allow it to stay suspended in the ambient air, filling every nook and cranny. These simple exercises can be done throughout one's day. Enjoy a simple walk in the park with your full attention and full awareness imbuing your entire surroundings. Do this daily. If you find yourself becoming easily distracted, then do just a few minutes or even a few seconds, over many times. This is normal in the beginning. Just do what you can. The rest will follow in time. The catalyst that will secure your aim towards success is first and foremost purpose. Every worthy endeavor, as the late Earl Nightingale evangelized in the early mid-century, is undoubtedly the variable that will keep you head down focused when the going gets tough, and as an entrepreneur or anyone noteworthy of success will tell you, it will get tough. With trials through the gradual application of these principles, you will gain the know-how to which and when each principle can be best applied to allow you to forge onward towards the completion of your goal. As a byproduct, their cumulative effect will reinstate this sense of purpose along with your journey's trials. Alpha. 2. Popular culture has tossed around the word alpha referring to someone with a societal disposition exhibiting a dominant influence over their peers. This isn't the premise for this book in particular. There is more to it than base ties to societal status, personality, and psychoanalysis. It goes much deeper. We're talking genetics, behavioral programming, down to the very root of it all, our habitual way of taking in information, and our modes of responding to that information. In recent, this blend of genetic conditioning coupled with the conditionings of environmental factors has been coined the paradigm. The beginningless ties to where your very genetic sequence is directly correlated with the results you are yielding are nothing but a preset of conditionings that have been both passed down through generations and further reinforced by our associated environment. Though the underlying factor remains the same across all vectors, that is, our ability to rewrite the paradigm altogether. Most often known as a paradigm shift is the process, in which, by actively engaging the information, sense data, that is flowing to and through our subconscious with our undivided awareness, and by making conscious decisions through how we respond, or not to respond, to this sense data is the act of rewriting our habitual behavior over time. It should be made clear that the very cause of unwanted traits of genetic conditioning and the UN agreeableness of all negative results unanimously stem from a lack of awareness. This lack of awareness is responsible for causing narrow-mindedness, reactivity versus responding, and is the default primitive part of the brain that takes on the role of animal-like reactive behaviors such as fight, flight, or freeze. Therefore, the first thought or the head of each thought or dataset is of high importance. To recognize when one is in any state of feeling, emotion, or thought, is awareness. This recognizing is awareness. Even, the very moment you realize you aren't being aware, this is awareness, though slightly in retrospect. Thus, I took the term alpha to mean first, referring to the first letter of the Greek alphabet. This also ties into the Greco-Roman theology of the alpha and the omega. You see, before you are, you must become. And before you must become, you first have to think. The alpha I'm referring to is thought. Alpha is the first thought that gives rise to its successor, the next thought in line. It germinates and splinters into infinitesimal other thoughts at warp speed. These processes are taking place in the central nervous system that deals with electrochemical substances known as neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters are flowing through a vast network of neurons at incredible speeds, that's similar to electricity. These frequencies are oscillating so fast that there is no definite pinpoint as to when one thought ends and another begins. When our mind is scattered with thought, there may be an irregularity in this operation. But most often it is due to an unsettled mind that is distracted. In meditation, this is referred to as the monkey mind. Akin to a monkey arbitrarily swinging from one branch to another with no viable aim in sight. Through practicing awareness using various methods, one can begin to strengthen this awareness as a whole. The awareness will provide the buffer zone of clarity that will allow the chaos, noise, and confusion to subside over time. Once this takes root, one will have to upkeep and maintain this practice over time. There are various forms of meditation one can adopt when starting off. There are many resources available online that offer step-by-step instructions for beginners. There are even mediation apps readily available for free that can be downloaded, a list of which is provided in the appendix. When assessing which form of meditation to undertake, one should avoid unwholesome methods or methods of distractions. A right or wholesome form of meditation will allow you to see things more clearly. One could be taking a simple stroll in the park on a calm summer evening. Or before you start your day, reserving 5 to 15 minutes to sit quietly along your bedside each morning. I don't want to discount the importance of just how life-transforming integrating a meditation routine in one's daily life can be by not covering it in greater detail, but the gravity of its benefits is astronomical. A few suggestions on finding a method that works for you. Again, find a wholesome, non-substance-induced mode of meditation that allows you to relax and at the same time to remain aware, calm, clear, and alert. To further highlight the importance of being self-aware, the following is an excerpt of the scientific compilation Athene's Theory of Everything from the firm called the Singularity Group based out of Berlin, Germany. The human brain is a network of approximately 100 million neurons. Different experiences create a different neural connection which brings about different emotions. And depending on which neurons get stimulated, certain connections become stronger and more efficient, while others become weaker. This is what's called neuroplasticity. For example, someone who trains countless hours to become a musician will create stronger neural connections that link the two hemispheres of the brain in order to be more musically creative. Virtually any talent or skill can be created through training. Rational and emotional resilience work in much the same way. These are neural connections that can be strengthened. Whatever you are doing at any time, you are physically modifying your brain to become better at it. Since this is such a fundamental mechanism of the neuron structure of the brain, being self-aware can greatly enrich our life experience. In Zen Buddhism, there's a saying, become rusty where you are well practiced, and become well practiced where you are rusty. In the light of social neuroscience, specific neurons and neurotransmitters, such as norepinephrine, trigger a defensive state when we feel that our thoughts have to be protected from the influence of others. If we are then confronted with differences in opinion, the chemicals that are released in the brain are the same ones that try to ensure our survival in dangerous situations. In this defensive, fight, flight or freeze state, the more primitive parts of the brain interfere with rational thinking, and the limbic system can knock out most of our working memory, physically causing narrow-mindedness. We see this when someone is stubborn in a discussion. No matter how significant or valuable an idea is, the brain has trouble processing it when it is in such a state. On a neural level, this paradigm of preset conditionings causes the brain to react as if we're being threatened, even if this threat comes from harmless opinions or facts that we may otherwise find helpful and could rationally agree with. But when we express ourselves and our views are appreciated, the defense chemicals decrease in the brain, and dopamine neurotransmissions activate the reward neurons, making us feel empowered and increasing our self-esteem and overall sense of well-being. Our beliefs have a profound impact on our body chemistry. This is why placebos can be so effective. Self-awareness or self-esteem is closely linked to the neurotransmitter serotonin. When the lack of it takes on severe proportions, it often leads to moods of depression and also may be attributed to self-destructive behavior such as substance abuse. Social validation increases the levels of dopamine and serotonin in the brain and allows us to let go of emotional fixations and become self-aware more easily. In recent findings, CT scans have shown these same effects occur in long-time meditation practitioners during a single session of meditation. The evidence is indisputable. When a person practices yoga, meditation, or some form of relaxation, their serotonin channels are said to give a wider berth, allowing a smoother flow in consciousness. This can also be observed in the carefree nature of children and their ability to retain and process information faster than their adult counterparts, due primarily in part to having a lower social validation threshold. Routinely promoting a relaxed state allows the liquid transfer of information more fluidly, reaching higher states of problem solving. Perhaps, this may be indicative of the reason our best ideas seem to come to us while taking a relaxing shower. As of recent, neurological research has confirmed the existence of empathetic mirror neurons. It is shown when we experience an emotion or perform an action, specific neurons fire. But when we observe someone else performing this action or when we imagine it, many of the same neurons will fire again, as if we were performing the action ourselves. These empathy neurons connect us to other people, allowing us to feel what others feel. And since these neurons respond to our imagination, we can experience emotional feedback from them as if it came from someone else. This system is what allows us to self-reflect. The mirror neuron does not know the difference between it and others. V. S. Ramachandran, India, an American neuroscientist. And is the very reason why we are so dependent on social validation and why we are willing to work towards social acceptance. At times this can result in confusion in terms of identity and self-esteem. And brain scans show that we experience negative emotions long before we are ever aware of them. But as we become more self-aware, we can alter misplaced emotions because we control the thoughts that produce them. This is a neurochemical consequence of how memories become labeled when retrieved and how they are restored through protein synthesis. Self-observing profoundly changing the way our brain works. The sympathetic nervous system operates at warp speed. It activates the self-regulating neocortical regions, which give us an incredible amount of control over our feelings. Every time we do this, our rationality and emotional resilience are strengthened. At any given moment, the brain is said to be processing 400 billion bits of information while our awareness is only in tune with 2,000 of those bits. That means reality is always happening in the brain, all the time, receiving the information, but we haven't fully integrated it into our awareness. Your newfound hold on an enhanced state of emotional awareness will aid in the forming of praxis while boosting your EQ, emotional quotient, output, aiding in various modes along your journey's path. One parallel you will become more in tune with as you begin unlocking the potentialities that are ever present is this fact, that the outside world is directly linked to our inner world. This has been made more apparent in recent years due entirely to the findings in quantum physics. In the universe there are two sets of laws according to science: classical physics, such as Newton's laws of motion derived hundreds of years ago, principles that work well with billiard balls and cannonballs and their association to gravity, and that of quantum physics, where quantum mechanics known as non-Newtonian physics proposes a new set of principles that take us infinitesimally down to the scale of atoms and electrons. Down at this scope and scale, particles exhibit a behavior that is unconventional to the standard model of science. Particles can be observed to be in multiple places at the same time, superposition. They may behave as particles or a wave smeared out spatially and temporally, wave/particle duality. They may be interconnected over great distances, entanglement. They may be unified into one state governed by one wave function, Bose-Einstein condensates. The partition that separates the mysteriousness between classical physics and the quantum realm is most often referred to as the collapse of the wave function. In the quantum world, everything is in a superposition of multiple possibilities, while in the classical world the multiple possibilities seem to collapse to particular definite choices so that everything is in one particular place. Quantum mechanics is said to be the play and display of information, the play and display of potentiality. Waves of information, waves of potential electron. This world of potential electron is the ocean of pure potentiality. This very field that permeates the entirety of existence has been coined by scientists as the unified field theory and superstring field theory. This connectivity among all things is a basic continuant of the fabric of reality. Erwin Schrödinger, one of the fathers of quantum mechanics, said that entanglement, which is the very idea of connectivity, is not just a property of quantum mechanics, it's the property. Therefore, it can be inferred by using both the information from neuroscience and the information gathered from quantum physics that the brain's neurons and the electrobiochemical nature of neurotransmitters are comprised of the same building blocks of all matter down to the subatomic level. These atoms and electrons, while governed by classical physics, are simultaneously governed by the quantum world. Thus, the current findings in science reveal a new paradigm of possibilities and further inches towards the sheer effective potentialities the inner world of a conscious observer has on the outside world, since both worlds operate using the same mechanics. Perhaps the best explanation of this was given by the British polymath Thomas Young through his demonstration of wave/particle duality as the famous double-slit experiment. More on this can be found in the appendix. Causality. 3. The law of cause and effect is seldom heard in today's society. The only form of this is usually applied as a passing curse when someone feels violated or offended in the form of karma. You may have used it yourself whilst overtaken by a fit of anger. Most often misunderstood to be a slander of ill will towards the doer. The truth is, karma is simply a set of cumulative actions coupled with intent that reach a result and effect on all levels of actuation. Perhaps the closest scientific description to this in practice is Newton's third law of motion: for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In every interaction, there is a pair of forces acting on the two interacting objects. The size of the forces on the first object equals the size of the force on the second object. The acts themselves have no volition or substantial feeling emitting from them, nor is there an external influence of an independent entity wielding the end result. They are simply unbiased actions initiated into play by their respective originating sources that go on to fizzle out, leaving a ripple of their resultant effects in their wake. Depending on the level of awareness of the observer or recipient of those effects will yield the perceived result. The amount of awareness is directly attributed to the further actions applied to those resultant effects, changing their trajectory through allowing the observer to notice these ripples either as they arise or in the not-too-distant wake of retrospect. The average person wouldn't even lend much consideration to causality as anything special or it having much to do with their daily interactions. The reality of it is that causality is the catalyst of everything from how you get out of bed in the morning, to the rate of speed and way you brush your teeth, to the goals you set, or lack thereof, to how much income is in your bank account. The question of whether correlation or causation is of most importance when determining which came first is an outdated quandary altogether. For the ability at any given moment to start fresh, initiating a new set of variables in hand, is ever present. The fintech firm Smart Finance, based in Beijing, China, offers someday loans using artificial intelligence developed into their mobile app platform. Their algorithm takes in a preset of identifiers before approving each applicant's submission form and gives the applicant an answer of either approved or denied in just under 10 seconds. By in-app monitoring and creditworthiness diagnostics, the firm discovered through cross-analysis of user data unanimously showed a demographic of smartphone users who kept a minimal charge at low battery had a higher delinquency rate on their credit sheet. This of course may just be a coincidence, but there is little to refute the many scientific studies conducted and conclusions posted on the subject of causation versus correlation. One of the most acclaimed studies was that of Carl Menninger, an American psychiatrist who found that environment has a greater influence and overall impact on someone's way of thinking than that person's genetics, predisposition, and heredity, combined. Perhaps the account of Rutger Gam would shed more light on just how powerful the actions we choose to invest in could yield the results we are seeking. Rutger, who was a self-admitted hopeless student who failed at basic math in grade school, went on to train as a mathematician and is now a world-renowned famous human calculator. The neuroplasticity targeted during this kind of training could be suggested as the extraordinary claims through theology and most often interpreted as special providence. Could simply be that the actions we choose to invest ourselves by their undertaking are nothing other than their reciprocating effects. The biblical equivalent to one's result input to output is best summarized in Corinthians 2:9. Whoever sows sparingly shall also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully shall also reap bountifully. The studies and extensive research demonstrated through experiments conducted under the light of neuroscience are becoming more widely accepted as unveiling behavioral patterns most often associated with genetic conditioning. These findings lend one to infer the sheer potential and possibilities behind these processing capabilities. There is little speculation as to the importance causality plays in every undertaking we decide to embark on in life. With this understanding, to choose to be more kind and considerate to one another has almost a selfish trait associated with it. In turn, you may find others becoming kinder and warmer towards you. Believe. 4. The biggest culprit to catastrophic failure isn't complacency, nor is it the lack of zeal. The number one enemy to any worthy undertaking is wishful thinking. Wishful thinking is the same as counting the number of zeros behind someone else's bank statement, or wishing something will go according to plan, having little realistic vantage point. The only stone-like impression your vision must adopt is one of general vicinity. The overall path towards your vision is going to be closer to a zigzag pattern than a beeline from A, Z. You will be met with unforeseeable circumstances that will inevitably present themselves at the most untimely of times. Stay the course. When Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale presented their movie idea Back to the Future to the head of Columbia Pictures, their idea was shelved. It wasn't until numerous failures that finally an opportunity came for them to prove to the world they were full-fledged movie makers. Of course, it didn't appear that way in the beginning. After a few unexpected changes to the script, they were given the green light by Universal to begin production. With their vision of having Michael J. Fox as their leading man met with opposition from the project director Sid Steinberg, who was appointed by the head of Universal, insisted on casting Eric Stoltz as the leading role, Marty McFly. The two were off to the races. It wasn't until 6 weeks into production and an impending deadline the two Bobs had realized that Eric Stoltz was not Marty McFly. They remembered what Sid had promised before they reluctantly agreed to go with Eric. Sid was so sure that Eric would fit the bill that the two could find anyone to replace him if he turned out to be wrong. The two went to Sid and asked if he could fulfill his promise. Recalling his own words, reluctantly gave in to the director's request, stating in his own words, "I think you are wrong, and history will probably prove that you're wrong. But I'm willing to do it. Not only because you all believe in it." So, essentially the director duo had to order the entire movie to be redone. Before then, this was unheard of in Hollywood. To order an entire crew to reset to shoot number one. Until then, such a monumental task had never been done. In a sense, the film crew was going back in time and reliving every take with the fresh, futuristic likeness, outlook of their new leading man Michael. The two Bobs began their ambitious endeavor as a half-baked vision, coupled with an unwavering belief, and a determination to press on regardless if the script was anything but certain. After a rejected screenplay, it would have been real easy for the two Bobs to throw in the towel. But through their insistence and determination, they persisted through the odds. From name changes, to face changes, the two left nothing to fate. Their perseverance and their inability to admit defeat turned out to be not only the message of the making of the movie, but the very movie itself. Robert Zemeckis would later go on to make hit after hit, one of which was the 1994 drama/romance Forrest Gump. Persist. 5. The author and founder of Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, in his research before writing the book discovered one key distinguishing trait that many of the successful people he interviewed had in common: their uncanny ability to make decisions when they had no idea how they were going to make what they were aiming towards happen, and their stubbornness to change that decision. It was said that when Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs set out to make the first household computer in Jobs' garage, the two at first didn't have the funds to buy the parts they needed to even begin. Jobs was determined to see his vision through so much so that along with convincing his partner Woz, they began their journey. Jobs sold his Volkswagen bus and Woz sold his HP 65 calculator to pool their money together to buy a single microchip that kicked them off in the direction they needed. Hewlett-Packard, HP, at the time might as well have been said to have all the money in the world, compared to the two. HP had the liberty to have 20 chips in their motherboard when Jobs and Woz could only afford one. Woz had to pull away several transistors and diodes to configure it to work. One by one, he was able to get it to work. Here in the small garage outside of Palo Alto were two college students stumbling their way through a process that would later prove in becoming a household name synonyms with computing. You may not know how you're going to do it at first. That's not important. To know that you are going to do it is all you need to get started. Chief engineer and CEO Elon Musk experienced several failures with the first 3 launches of his now successful rocket company SpaceX. It wasn't until reinvigorating his team and scrounging up enough parts for a 4th launch he had his persistence paid off. The SpaceX team was said to have only enough money left for the T4th launch, and that if it had not succeeded, that would have been the end of SpaceX. Musk has been said to have encountered a slew of challenges in various forms from both SpaceX and Tesla. During the production of his Model 3 at the Tesla Gigafactory, Musk was working 7-day weeks, 22-hour shifts, sleeping in the factory, working the assembly line, body shop, paint shop, and design room. The company was said to be bleeding money and they were nearing closure with same budget weeks. Musk's ability to persist while facing fearful odds is perhaps his greatest asset, one that is indicative throughout the magnates of history. Undoubtedly, you will encounter your own versions of challenges along your path. At times you may find yourself overwhelmed with an overtaking idea of wanting to give up and the urge to start a new venture in hopes you will have success sooner than what you are currently yielding. The next time you are faced with this impulse to shift and start a new project without completing your current goal, keep the story by Drive. Russell Conwell, founder of Temple University, at the forefront of your mind. Field of Diamonds. The story is on account of an African farmer who had heard tales about other farmers who had made millions by discovering diamond mines. These tales so excited the farmer that he could hardly wait to sell his farm and go prospecting for diamonds himself. So, he sold his farm and lived out the rest of his life wandering the African continent searching unsuccessfully for the gleaming gems which brought such high prices to the markets of the world. Finally, this true event goes, worn out and in a fit of despondency he threw himself into a river and drowned. Meanwhile, back at the farm, the man who bought his farm happened to be crossing a small stream on the property when all of a sudden he caught a glimmer of bright light. 1 and 2, red and blue flashes emanating from the stream bottom. Not giving it a second thought he stooped down and picked up the stone. It was a nice stone and admiring it later set it on his fireplace mantle as an interesting curiosity. Several weeks passed when a visitor picked up the stone, looked closely at it, hefted it in his hand, and nearly fainted. In disbelief, he asked the farmer if he knew what he had found. When the farmer said no, that he thought it was a piece of crystal, the visitor told him he had found one of the largest diamonds ever discovered. Well, the farmer had trouble believing this was true, being that the creek was full of such stones, not as large perhaps as the one on the mantle, but they were sprinkled generously throughout the creek bed. Needless to say, the farm that the first farmer had sold so that he may go off and search for a diamond mine turned out to be the most productive diamond mine on the entire African continent. The first farmer had owned it free and clear, acres of diamonds, but had sold them for nearly nothing in order to look for them elsewhere. The moral is clear. If the first farmer had studied and equipped himself with the knowledge of what a diamond looked like in its rough state, and being that he had already owned a piece of the African continent to thoroughly explore the property he had before looking elsewhere, all of his expansive endeavors would have come true. Drive. Conwell went on to promote the idea that each of us at this very moment is standing in the middle of his or her own acres of diamonds. This ties back into the importance of committing fully to the task that requires our fullest attention in order to complete and achieve ultimate success. If we run the risk of jumping from one goal to another without fully committing our time and effort towards one particular aim, we undoubtedly will become more like a jack of all trades and master of none than reaping the ore of our present field. Reciprocity. 6. As you make your way onward towards realizing your goal and ultimately achieving success, you will learn along the way that everything is interconnected. This interconnectedness is in direct correlation with the explanations given in Chapter 3 of Causality. The main difference with correlation of this magnitude is intent. There's nothing truer that the quality of thought which we entertain correlates externals in the outside world. This is the law from which there is no escape, and it is this law, this correlative of thought with its object, that from time immemorial has led people to believe in special providence. Williams. In today's time, we rarely give a second thought to appreciate the things that make life so convenient for us. How often do we stop to consider the many hands that go into facilitating our needs and enabling us to experience a pleasant mode of living? The next time you find yourself stuck in traffic, think of the many hands that went into designing the vehicle you find yourself sitting in. Or the time, manpower, and sheer magnitude of the entire interstate highway system, and the cooperation it took to engineer and construct the road at which you find yourself halted on. Carry this practice with you at all times. Before long, you will have developed a sense of gratitude and appreciation that will enable you to inch ever closer towards the completion of your goal and to ultimate success. When whether you're using the railway system or walking along the university grounds and with everyone you come in contact with, think to yourself, did I construct this place, device, or facility with my very hands? Did I produce the electricity that powers my refrigerator that keeps my food from perishing too quickly? You may have earned money to pay for the facilitation of these services, but the fact is many hands go into every aspect of our daily lives, and our connection to one another is the foundation. Global surveys have revealed more than 50% of the entire globe believes in some form of reincarnation. In Hebraic religions, an afterlife where one is possibly reincarnated into a heavenly state of being can be found. In Buddhism and Hinduism, one is reincarnated over and over for countless eons, taking on various forms, including heavenly states of being. Science is now beginning to suggest that we live in a sort of constant mode of reincarnation, with thought taking form, coming into being, abiding a short while, exhibiting a state of change, then dissipating. It would be viable as a practice to infer that there is great merit in seeing this as a big picture schematic of the way the entire scope of existence operates. From physically being born to the choices and thoughts we entertain during life, the resultant outcome of how the body ends, and the resultant effects of all thoughts in between. Well, just imagine if we all do reincarnate to this same planet, taking on the attributes of past actions and the forms they delineate as a successive iteration from the last. What if those very actions have a ripple effect that directly impacts the future we may very come to inhabit once again sometime in the future? Wouldn't that be an incentive to lay out your very best at all times, so that when it comes the time you will be the sole inheritor of the very actions you put forth in the past? What I'm suggesting is to develop and foster a sense of inheritance and accountability for one's causal intake and output. This idea that every action we put forth, every utterance we invest into society, every mode of thought bear the potential of proliferation as a subsequent contribution to the whole picture. Developing such awareness and integrating it into your mode of thinking will only add value in your pursuit of success. Perhaps someone who has best explained this in the most scientific way possible was Tom Chi during his TED Talk back in 2016, titled Everything is Connected. In this overview, Tom seamlessly covers and leaves no room for doubt and speculation but rather a concrete physical explanation of one fundamental ingredient that all benevolent ideologies stem from without ever inching towards the likes of metaphysics and theology. He begins by bringing forth the common denominator of us all, our breath, the origins of which began some 3 billion years ago, a time on Earth when the planet's oxygen net effect left it almost completely uninhabitable. During this time the only organism that could exist were single-celled organisms called cyanobacteria. This organism could photosynthesis by taking the energy from our star and transforming the carbon dioxide-rich atmosphere into oxygen over some 2.5 billion years. Just starting from 2.5 billion years ago, little by little these bacteria spread across the planet and converted all that carbon dioxide in the air into oxygen that we now have. This slow process took place by the cyanobacteria saturating the seas along with saturating the oxygen that the Earth would absorb, and only then could oxygen begin to build in the atmosphere. Before the Cambrian explosion took place there was essentially no complex multicellular life. Earth was essentially uninhabitable. In plain, nothing that you and I are familiar with today could exist without the contributions of these tiny organisms over those billions of years. With this in context, now begin to imagine along a thought experiment. You were one of these little organisms 2 billion years ago. You might be born. You live a couple of weeks. You die. And you kind of feel like, well, nothing changed. I mean, I had no purpose in this life. Like, the world I came to is exactly the same as the world I left. But what you wouldn't have understood of this short time on Earth is that every breath that you took contributed to the possibility of countless lives after you, lives that you would never see, lives that we are all part of today. And it's worth thinking that maybe the meaning of our lives today is actually not even within the scope of our understanding. Because it's true of every one of these organisms, and it may also be true of us. Internal forbearance. 7. Transmutation is taking a perceived notion, most often in the negative form, and turning it around. This is shining a light of sorts, from various angels to illuminate a new approach and successfully overcoming a perceived obstacle. To expose its potentialities that are most often impaired in an impulse wake of emotional overtaking. Once we begin to settle the mind and allow our awareness to come fully forward imbuing our entire scope of conciseness, we will then be able to take on new angles of approach. As a consequence, you may gradually find yourself becoming more tolerable of things that once easily frustrated you. You may begin to feel as though you have a new burst of energy. But, before you can begin reaping the full benefits of this newfound mode of living, you will first have to come to the understanding that with great success comes great sacrifice. Most of this sacrifice will come at the cost of allowing yourself to become the person you need to become. This may come at a cost of uncomfortableness. You may at times feel like an imposter. This is due to paradigm shifting. You are rewriting old genetic idiosyncrasies that refuse to go quietly. Allow the uncomfortableness. This is the ultimate price. Are you willing to endure all of the uncomfortable changes that you and others will see in you? Are you willing to allow the ease of ebb and flow to naturally take root in your newfound consciousness? Internal forbearance is the ability to stabilize on awareness without force or aversion. When the perceived invading habits come knocking on the screen of your mind, are you going to allow the default of running the outdated sequences of genetic conditioning? Though, to be too rigid in adopting this new outlook is also a hindrance to your overall aim. Be conscientious, alert, and aware. It's recommended to allow each thought to simply come and go as they are. No need to get frustrated if at first you feel that you haven't made much progress. Just simply keep trying. Notice the thoughts arise, don't acknowledge the wandering thoughts, but rather let them float on by. Soon the distracting thoughts will fizzle out. Allow this so. Establishing this sense of calmness and repose will be the looking glass that will enable you to unlock the hidden potentialities along your journey. Relentless fortitude will be your wish-fulfilling jewel. One of the most inspirational pieces ever written presented by Thomas Macaulay can be applied to our own mind as a metaphor to press forward when at times it may seem like the odds are stacked against us. Excerpt. Horatius at the bridge. Then out spoke brave Horatius the captain of the gate. To every man upon this earth death cometh soon or late. And how can man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his father in the temple of his gods? Hew down the bridge, Sir Consul, with all the speed ye may. I, but two beside me, will hold the foe in play. In yon straight path 1,000 may well be stopped by 3. Now who will stand on either hand and guard the bridge with me? Horatius went on to guard that very bridge until the Roman offense was able to destroy it, protecting the city from the Etruscan advance. As with the importance to do the things one should do, the things one should avoid are just as important for the overall completion of one's goal, one of which is to avoid unnecessary commitment. This can be best avoided by not allowing one's mouth to run away. Try at best to avoid idle chatter. When we find ourselves engaging in trivial discourse with no particular aim and for the sake of just passing the time, this is likened to exhibiting an unbridled mind, which is like having a vessel that is plentiful yet for no apparent reason sprung a leak. Soon the vessel will be drained of its contents and lethargy and the lack of energy set in. Or a mind scattered with thought and idea with no particular goal in sight is only a mind that is self-enveloped by its habit of habitual thinking. This ties into giving high regard to what people may say about you. Along your journey to success, forget what others say about you or your goal setting. One of the biggest pitfalls that we often run into when we first set out to accomplish anything of great significance is the notion to be liked. If you spread yourself too thin, you may run the risk of allowing others to sap you of the precious energy needed to get you from one task to the other. Be brief with others in speech, but be kind. I recently ran across a survey that read, both hospice nurses and academic researchers attest that the most common end-of-life regret is too much time wasted trying to please others and ignoring the dictates of your own heart. A simple observation one can practice is to observe the body language and speech rate of any successful person. You will notice a mode of conservation of energy. This person is most likely to only respond to the interviewer's questions with direct answers, sometimes adding a little at the end, but usually avoids going off on a tangent. Of course, it's unavoidable to achieve your goal. You will most likely require the cooperation of others. This can be done through the application of assertion towards a mutual benefit. Most often someone is more apt to cooperate when they too have something to gain. It's also highly important to be nice to whom you're trying to persuade, but this aspect isn't as important for the recipient as the object of gain itself. Needless to say, nice goes a long way. Thus, finding the balance of give and take to safeguard one's vital life force is of high importance. Having enough ample energy in your reservoir that will allow you to press forward when the going gets tough is imperative. Having enough motivation and zeal reserved in one's storehouse makes for healthy retention of what ancient Eastern Indian medicine refers to as prana and in the Far East as chi. Safeguarding against a leaky vessel comes in several forms. One in which is to safeguard against biochemical dissipation. Avoid yielding to the call of an overactive sex drive. To try and retain as much of this vital life force energy as possible will only boost your levels of cognition and aid in propelling you further along your journey. Other forms to avoid are overindulgence in food, intoxicants, and in excessive sleep. Self-mastery is an ongoing unfoldment where a balance to one's activities should be weighed carefully. After all, the reasons we are yielding the same results time after time are directly attributed to the views, thoughts, actions we engage and in part from our environment. Incrementally, accruing to the resultant state as a whole. This segues into the reason for ennobling a chaste mind. You see, for what seems as since time immemorial our mind has been likened to an open wound, allowing the influx of environmental stimuli to invade each layer of tissue, sprouting and germinating uncontrollably while entangling bits of information that come into contact with. If we practice a state of constant mindfulness, those sprouts become fewer and fewer. Then, over time you will begin noticing your ability to allow certain sprouts entry, the beneficial ones, into your subconscious. And the resultant force will rewrite the old habitual patterns that are no longer serving you. Those habitual patterns are most often associated with obsolete thinking. For instance, have you ever found yourself saying the same things or thinking in ways your grandparents used to? Your grandparents came up at a different time. The resources and facilities we have today are light years apart in terms of technological advancement. The information that would be found in an Encyclopedia Britannica against the speed and processing power of say your smart device coupled with the magical ability to peer through a window pane on your desk into the lives of virtually anyone on the planet without ever leaving the comfort of your own home is a far cry, to say the least. What I'm leading you into is the power of affirmation. The ability to replace the outdated information that is no longer compatible with today's landscape and to enable you to see the magnitude of just how much potential is lying dormant in every one of us. Since the brain has trouble distinguishing between what is real and what is imagined, this can be utilized in various ways and speaks to the importance of how the power affirmation of thought can transmute your current thinking into the results you're seeking. From the indisputable evidence of mirror neurons, to the connectivity given through quantum entanglement, both neurology and the unified field theory suggest we are capable of changing the trajectory of our path on all levels, internally as well as externally, and between. This leads me to highlight the importance of praxis. The act of taking what one is thinking and integrating it into action as a form of practice is essential when building on the brain's neuroplasticity. Application of effort towards not entertaining certain, negative or self-destructive, thoughts is equally important, as they have the same power to be integrated into the psyche, for the brain is plastic with no actual volition, feeling, or objection associated with the intake of information. It will take in all information indiscriminately and act on that information accordingly. To marry belief with practice has been utilized by divinity throughout the ages in the form of prayer, recitation, and chanting. These forms of affirmation are directed, knowingly or unknowingly, towards the subconscious, enabling one's neuroplasticity to integrate the intent/belief one is holding in with the actions one performs over time, thus establishing overall compatibility and direct accordance. Mode of movement. 8. Developing and maintaining a mode of movement will be conducive and will be in direct proportion to the amount of energy you pour into your undertaking. It may be an evening walk in the park, or you may choose a morning ride on your favorite bike trail, or you may choose to swim a few laps before work. Whichever mode of movement you choose, know that this continuous energy output reciprocates directly back into the goal at which you are engaged with completing. The locomotion processes in which you engage in both outside the body and what you put inside, through sustenance intake, are of equal importance. Whatever moves without also moves within. There is movement throughout all functions of the body. From the friction created of each individual molecule moving throughout the body, such as the flow of blood cells, to the food we intake making its way throughout the body's digestive tract. To build a sense of mindfulness of the quality of sustenance we choose to derive our nutrition and energy composition from is of high importance if you want to reach your optimal operating potential. Of course, before considering the following information, it is recommended to check with your healthcare provider before engaging the following suggestions. Apart from body fitness, physical exercise also has beneficial effects on the brain. A routine of aerobic exercise can improve memory, thinking skills, moods, and promote protective effects against aging, injuries, and neurodegenerative disorders. One should take note that effects are specific to aerobic exercise, the kind of exercise that accelerates heart rate and respiratory rate, such as running, cycling, and swimming. These effects appear to result from increased blood flow to the brain and subsequent increases in energy metabolism. A certain degree of intensity is required to achieve the beneficial outcome. Suggested length of duration and schedule is something between 30 to 45 minutes, 3 to 4 times per week of moderate to high intensity. Studies have revealed that aerobic exercise increases the production of several growth factors of the nervous tissue, known as neurotrophic factors, among which BDNF, for brain-derived neurotrophic factor, has a central role. BDNF exerts a protective effect on existing neurons and stimulates the formation of new neurons from neural stem cells in a process called neurogenesis. This process improves the overall survival of existing neurons, produces new brain tissue, and constitutes the brain-enhanced state of plasticity that underlies the exercise-induced protective effects against aging, degenerative diseases, and injuries. BDNF plays a prime role in the processes of the brain's hippocampus, the area that is responsible for memory retention and learning. In fact, regular exercise has been shown to increase the size of the hippocampus and improve cognitive functions, while acute exercise, defined as a single workout, can produce a significant change in BDNF levels and subsequent improvements in learning performance. A regular exercise program progressively increases the BDNF baseline level and makes its response steadier over time. It appears that some cognitive functions are enhanced immediately after a single workout, while others only improve following a consistent exercise routine. The immediate effect of acute exercise is most remarkable on the body's affective state. A single bout of exercise can promote positive emotions, transmute negative feelings, reduce the body's states of stress, and sometimes, after intense exercise, induce a euphoric state sometimes referred to as runner's high sensation. These undoubtedly offset any previous negative blockage that the body may have stored over time. The sensation can sometimes persist for as long as 24 hours after the exercise was performed. Exercise-induced upregulators of several neurotransmitters involved in mood modulation include key neurotransmitter upregulators, serotonin known as the substance of well-being and happiness, dopamine a neurotransmitter of the brain reward pathways, beta endorphin, endogenous opioid, endogenous morphine, Anandamide, endogenous cannabinoid. Endogenous opioids, morphine, and cannabinoids are naturally generated by the brain's psychophysiological processes and are involved in pain modulation, stress, and anxiety reduction and are believed to underlie the runner-shy sensation. To enable the smooth functioning of the brain by further fostering and enabling the natural processes of serotonin, here are some helpful suggestions. Go for regular massages. Make sure you're receiving an adequate intake of tryptophan, naturally found in food sources such as nuts, seeds, and some beans. Engage in routine activities that promote a state of relaxation, such as sitting meditation and yoga. As mentioned in previous chapters, by practicing these activities it's possible to regulate nerve signals and improve the activity of neurotransmitters, promoting a sense of well-being. Once you begin regulating everything in your aim for the successful completion of your goal, you may then begin reaping the reciprocating benefits of task management. In all of history the term time management has been somewhat of a semantic misnomer, if there was ever any. The sheer magnitude of the idea of managing something as intangible as time, alone seems daunting. In all accounts, tasks require the decisive action of movement from being arranged to their full execution. In essence, time cannot be managed. Only the task at hand is manageable. Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk get all of the same time available in a day as everyone else in the world, 24 hours. Their wealth combined wouldn't be enough to purchase one additional hour to the clock, let alone a whole year's worth. The only manageable aspect of everyone's perceived notion of time is the task at hand. A burdensome bulk of tasks can be well managed and manipulated so to give off the illusion of compacting more hours and covering more ground in a shorter amount of time. In essence, as the old saying goes, many hands make light work may just be the compilation of compounded actions through a proven system of task management. In order to become highly effective in your mode of movement, you will have to adjust to the newfound idea of task management. This may take on various forms and may seem difficult in the beginning. But, inevitably, as practice makes perfect, it will seem to sort itself out along the way. You will be able to gain a greater footing in deciding quickly on which tasks to engage in and which to set aside for a later time. Here is a diagram of how some tasks may be arranged. Minuscule tasks can be dictated to subordinates. Middle-sized tasks can be outsourced to third-party facilitators. Tedious and repetitive tasks can be automated using the various apparatuses of IT and technology across most vectors. A few additional helpful tips of the trade when arranging your inventory of task management protocols are presented in the following. 1. Invest in a pen and pad of a size that can be easily tossed in your bag or briefcase, alluding to the importance of getting used to transferring one's thoughts onto paper. As soon as you make the transfer from head to paper, the anxiety and weight of having to recall are significantly reduced. 2. Keep a schedule of your workout routine on your person at all times. Look at it daily. Be flexible but consistent. Your hours may vary, especially if you are engaged in a startup, most often demanding long hours. Find the time. 3. Reduce the amount of clutter that surrounds you. Adopt a minimalist mindset. I lived out of my suitcase for years, even during my startup days. Less to cloud your mind, the freer you are to process information quicker. Of course, not all will have this luxury. Keep a balance, but try to only survive with the bare necessities. It will help pull you through when the going gets tough. 4. Set some time aside for your spiritual endeavors, whether it is in the form of prayer or meditation. Or, if you're not the religious type, set aside some alone time or me time. Try not to compromise with this step if you can help it. 5. Know your team if you're heading a startup, part of a company, or training for a marathon. Know your place and the place of others. Knowing who you can go for advice and knowing who and when to give advice is a crucial trait to have when working towards a cohesive endeavor. 6. Stay up to speed. In this fast-paced, ever-changing landscape it's growing increasingly important to have a rudimentary understanding of the changes in technological advancements. Of course, there are exemptions to this as in the case of musicians. Most instruments are static in evolution. In this case staying open and attuned to advancement and learning may be suitable. As for an aspiring software engineer who's looking to develop the next unicorn mobile application, staying up to speed is paramount. 7. Develop a playlist of affirmations, inspirational quotes, and inspirational talks given by certified mentors. A list of examples can be found in the appendix. Keep in mind, you don't have to use every word, particularly the parts you don't agree with, or the parts that conflict with a particular set of views. Not all characteristics are the same, but their application can be most applied in any undertaking, or towards any worthy cause. 8. Patience. Some will have quicker success than others. Allow yourself 6 months to 2 years to apply these guidelines and see them through to fruition. Risk aversion will be a predominant nag along your journey. When it arises, simply observe it as you would a passing cloud. Allow it to come and go, freely. Keep moving forward. Keep this quote before you, by Josie P. H. Campbell. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Author S. Resources. F.E.E. Evan Carmichael, motivational composer. https://www. youtube.com/user/modelingpmasters. Proctor Gallagher Institute, Self-Mastery. https://www. youtube.com/channel/h20lfimert pkw1 Zutak. Jay Shetty, motivational composer. https://www. youtube.com/channel/usib60agix2zyg0llvg. Motivation Hub, motivational videos. https://www. youtube.com/channel/ucr54lf_defate srmrqntwgq. YouTube channels. Helpful links. Tom Chi, TEDx Taipei. https://www. youtube.com/whatch. V equals RPH3C8 Earl Nightingale, The Strangest Tea Secret. https://u2.b/y5xkjbme_e. Admiral McRaven, Commencement Speech. https://u2.b/bigbcf9jc. Athena's DH Theory of Everything. Insightful compilation of the guys out at Singularity Group, Berlin, Germany. https://u2.b/dbh5l0b200. Meditation aids. Insight Timer, app iOS, Android. https://insighttimer.com/com. App iOS, Android. https://www.com. Netflix series, Headspace, Guide to Meditation. For purchase. Can be found on Amazon.com. What the bleep do we know? DM. Discovering the endless possibilities for altering your everyday reality. Think and Grow Rich, written by Napoleon Hill. The Secret, written by Rhonda Byrne. The Master Key System, by Charles F. Haanel. Ancient Secret of the Fountain of Youth, by Peter Kelder. Comma suggested only. The author has no affiliation nor does not receive affiliate royalties upon purchase. All rights are revered by their designated publishers. The author of A Guide to Unlocking Alpha, Uncovering the Intersections, Where Success Awaits is not held liable nor is responsible for such materials. Glossary. Alpha, the first letter of the Greek alphabet, alpha, transliterated as A. Bose-Einstein condensate is a state of matter which is typically formed when a gas of bosons at low densities is cooled to temperatures very close to absolute zero. Brain-derived neurotrophic factors, BDNF, is a member of the neurotrophin family of growth factors, which are related to the canonical nerve growth factor. Cambrian explosion, an event approximately 541 million years ago in the Cambrian period when practically all major animal phyla started appearing in the fossil record. It lasted for about 13 to 25 million years and resulted in the divergence of most modern metazoan phyla. Causality, the relationship between cause and effect. Causation, the action of causing something. Classical physics, is a group of physics theories that predate modern, more complete, or more widely applicable theories. Connectivity, the state of being connected or interconnected. Correlation, a mutual relationship or connection between two or more things. Cyanobacteria, a division of microorganisms that are related to the bacteria but are capable of photosynthesis. They are prokaryotic and represent the earliest known form of life on the earth. Emotional quotient, EQ, the ability to perceive, use, understand, manage, and handle emotions. Entanglement, the action or fact of entangling or being entangled. Karma, in Hinduism and Buddhism, the sum of a person's actions in his and previous states of existence, viewed as deciding their fate in future existences. Label, of or characterized by emotions which are easily aroused, freely expressed, and tend to alter quickly and spontaneously. Law of cause and effect, is a universal law which specifically states that every single action in the universe produces a reaction no matter what. Furthermore, every single item within the universe is relative and that nothing is separate. Limbic system, the part of the brain involved in our behavioral and emotional responses. Minimalist, strive to only use things that serve a purpose. Mirror neuron, type of sensory motor cell located in the brain that is activated when an individual performs an action or observes another individual performing the same action. Neurology, the branch of medicine or biology that deals with the anatomy, functions, and organic disorders of nerves in the nervous system. Neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to form and reorganize synaptic connections, especially in response to learning or experience or following injury. Neurotransmitter, a chemical substance which is released at the end of a nerve fiber by the arrival of a nerve impulse and, by diffusing across synapse or junction, affects the transfer of the impulse to another nerve fiber, a muscle fiber, or some other structure. Neurotrophic, relating to the growth of nervous tissue. Omega, the last letter of the Greek alphabet, omega. Transliterated as O or O, paradigm shift, a fundamental change in approach or underlying assumptions. Prana, breath, considered as a life-giving force. Praxis, practice, as distinguished from theory, often said to be the integration of action with belief. Quantum physics, a branch of physics concerned with quantum theory. Serotonin, a compound present in blood platelets and serum, which constricts the blood vessels and acts as a neurotransmitter. Functions include modulating mood, cognition, reward, learning and memory. Social neuroscience, a research discipline that examines how the brain mediates social processes and behavior. Spatially, in a way that relates to space and the position, area, and size of things within it. Superposition, the action of placing one thing on or above another, especially so that they coincide. Temporally, with regard to time. Tryptophan, an amino acid which is a constituent of most proteins. It is an essential nutrient in the diet of vertebrates. Unified field theory, superstring field theory, describes any attempt to unify the fundamental forces of physics between elementary particles into a single theoretical framework. Wave/particle duality, as the concept in quantum mechanics that every particle or quantum entity may be described as either a particle or a wave. It expresses the inability of the classical concepts particle or wave to fully describe the behavior of quantum scale objects. The body, not I, not me, not mine, not self, just phenomena. Feelings, not I, not me, not mine, not self, just phenomena. Mind, not I, not me, not mine, not self, just phenomena. Objects of mind, not I, not me, not mine, not self, just phenomena. An ancient truth. Cited references. Athena's Theory of Everything, insightful compilation of the Guys Out at Singularity Group, Berlin, Germany. Lead the Field by Earl Nightingale. Tom Chi. 2016 TED Talk, TEDx Taipei. What the bleep do we know? DM. Discovering the endless possibilities for altering your everyday reality. Dr. Quantum's explanation of the double slit experiment. Alila Medical Media, effects of exercise on the brain, animation. Time Pass Maki, 5 ways to increase serotonin.